Hey humans, welcome back to otro videito más. Today, we're going to be talking about overheating with the Sony ZV-E1, a massive problem that obviously everyone has. This video also features Smallrig Fan and Tilta Fan, and they're going to be helping us out in this overheating problem. But yeah, let's get to it. Okay, so first things first, the video is about overheating and basically trying to find a good solution to the problem. Now, I did ran a few tests that came to overheating, and I have some definitive answers. Now, I just gotta say, all of you guys that do overheating tests, hats off to you, because that is super time consuming. So if you're watching somebody do an overheating test on something, just give them a like, a subscribe, or a comment, or all three, just because it's super time consuming. You'll see when we get into the details. All right, so first off, I want to say that I sold my Sony a7S III because I want it to go lighter. This is gonna be funny later in a couple months, but I want it to go lighter on the setup. I could use it for traveling and whatnot. This is lighter, obviously, but it does overheat. And I'm so used to shooting 120 frames per second. Usually for all B-roll, I'm shooting 120 frames per second because you never know. I guess if I'm vlogging or if I'm doing talking heads, then I'm not really shooting 120 frames per second because it's unnecessary, and I'm shooting 24p. We know that this camera was made technically for vloggers because it's in the vlogger lineup, like the ZV, which is vlogging lineup of Sony. It wasn't made for like long footage or like a cinema rig or anything of that. But of course, we're consumers, you know, we're trying to push the limits of what is given to us. All right, so before we get into some detail here, I'm gonna give you the rundown. That way you know and you don't have to wait around. But if you wanna get more in depth later, then you can stick around. Okay, so first off, no fan. This is just a ZV-E1 by itself. I got, at 4K 120, I got 12 minutes. At the highest bit rate is 280. Keep that in mind. It's 10-bit 422, 280 bit rate. No fan, no nothing, just a camera and a battery. 12 minutes. Not too good. I wanted to push this camera a little bit, so I went 4K 120 with each fan, but I was also charging the camera while I was doing it. And this was kind of to replicate if I was shooting in a rig. Most of the time when you're shooting a rig, you have a V-mount battery connected to it. So this was kind of to replicate that. With the Tilta fan, I got 25 minutes at 4K 120. And with a Smallrig fan, I got 28 minutes. So 3 more minutes of record time. I mean, I'll take it. Moving on, I also did a test with no charging of any kind. Since I realized that the 4K 120 wasn't lasting enough for the battery to just deplete, I was like, let me unplug this. That way we don't introduce extra heat. So this next test was just the Sony ZV-E1 with the fan using the power from the battery recording at 4K 120. So with the Tilta fan, that gave me a total of 35 minutes, which is more than when charging the battery. And with the Smallrig fan, it gave me 46 minutes of 4K 120 at the highest bit rate. That is like the pinnacle of these tests because 4K 120 obviously is the most demanding to this camera. I mean, it's so demanding that they were planning on not including it in the camera, and they didn't. They had to include it in a firmware update. So like, only because we asked, but I prefer to have it and be able to use it and have the camera overheat than to not have it at all. Sony, just include everything you can. We'll decide, you know. Obviously, we can work around overheating. But that is basically it. That's the test. Now we're gonna go into detail. Now, every test I ran was in 22 degrees Celsius or 72 degrees Fahrenheit. This was a nice, well-controlled environment, so keep that in mind when you're reviewing this. And a quick disclaimer, both of these fans have 2 speeds, normal speed and hyper speed. So all these tests were done with the fans at full power. Now diving into the details of the test, the first one, that was the fan on the camera and the camera being charged simultaneously. The test that I ran was, first off, the camera cooled down at its coldest it can possibly be without putting it in the freezer, and it was 25 minutes with the Tilta fan, right? I let it rest for 10 minutes, and then I got 12.5 minutes. And then I shut it off after it overheated. I shut it off, turn it back on right away, maybe like 10 seconds, and then I got 2.5 minutes. Now, when it came to the Smallrig fan, the camera was cooled off super hard. It lasted for 28 minutes. I let it cool down for 10 minutes. Then went back at it and it went for 17 minutes. And then after that overheated, I turned it off, on and again, and then it lasted for 4 minutes. On that particular test, definitely Smallrig was the winner and the champion. So those were the tests for 4K 120. It was pretty awesome, okay? If you want a little more record time, then you can always record in a lower bit rate, but you'd be giving up quality. So it's up to you, the balance and how long you need the camera to record without stopping. Now, when it comes to 4K 60 and 4K 24, there's one thing I did. I didn't charge the camera while the test was running, but when the battery was getting low, then I plugged it in because I wanted to keep it going and see how long can we go for, right? Especially if you have it mounted on a rig, right? I didn't put it to charge throughout the whole time because that adds to the heating part of it. So if you're using a rig, make sure you use it without charging the camera at the same time. And then once the battery gets pretty low, then you hook it up to the rig and then you can technically keep going, as you'll see in a few seconds. Now at 4K 60 with the Tilta fan, I got 2 hours and 39 minutes and I put it to charge when the battery hit 0%. I plugged it in and it kept going until the card literally got full. So I couldn't record anymore because the 256 gig card was depleted. So it was time to move on. So I did the same test with the Smallrig fan and that test gave me 2 hours and 25 minutes and I put the battery to charge when it was at 7%. I don't know if putting the battery to charge at 7% versus 0% gave it a little bit of extra heat, which made it not perform as good as it's been shown in the previous test, and that might be, I'm not sure, but it's pretty close. It's off by 10 minutes and I was already recording for 2 hours and 25 minutes. I mean, that's pretty long for 4K 60. So keep that in mind. If I wouldn't have put the camera to charge, then the camera would have died because the battery was depleted and then the test would have been over sooner. So technically the camera lasted its whole battery cycle shooting 4K 60 without overheating, which is a really, really good thing. Yes, with the fans, keep that with the fans. And so obviously on the 4K 60, the Smallrig didn't perform as well, but again, it was just by 10 minutes. So I don't think it's that big of a deal, especially after you've been shooting for 2 hours and 25 minutes. So moving on. All right, Future Pablo here. I forgot to add this in here, but when shooting 4K 24p with the camera by itself, no fan, no charging, no nothing, the camera lasted 1 hour and 22 minutes before it overheated. So keep that in mind when you see the results of shooting 24p when using the fans. We're shooting 24p and these tests were pretty boring because they literally lasted 3 hours. Camera did not overheat. Both fans were used at the top speed, but for the Tilta fan and the Smallrig fan at 4K 24p, I mean, no overheating issues. It was going for 3 hours. The card had more space to go all the way to 5 hours, but I wasn't gonna do that because that's a long time, guys. So definitely no problems with the 4K 24p. You can record to your heart's content. And now you can take a look at Gerald Undun's chart. So he's also done testing on it, and his video is also a banger video that you guys should go to watch. But his video is talking about the Sony ZV-E1 without any fans. This is just a camera by itself. My tests are used with the fans and how much they can extend the life of this camera so it doesn't overheat. I thought they were pretty good findings. I mean, I shoot a lot of 4K 120, but it's good to know that 4K 60 works really, really well with the fans and I don't have to worry about overheating really. So that's really good to know. It's good that these are reliable and useful. Now, one thing I kind of noticed, here are the two fans side by side, and this is the Tilta fan, and this is the Smallrig fan, right? And you see that the contact area is bigger on the Tilta than the Smallrig, right? Well, when I was testing these fans out with the heat gun to see what the temperature was that these fans were pushing out, there was something interesting that I noticed. On the Tilta fan, you literally see like a circle, and that is the coldest part that reaches 32 degrees Fahrenheit. As in like 0 degrees Celsius, as in like freezing. So it reaches that temperature in the center right here. And I thought that was awesome. I was like, man, this is gonna perform so much better because it's lower temperature, of course, because the Smallrig gets up to 40 in the center. Well, that wasn't the case. So after I got the result, I did retest just to see what was going on with each fan, because obviously this technically has more surface area touching the back of the camera and dissipating heat than this one, right? Because it's, you can see it. It obviously is larger. What I realized when I started measuring stuff is that the condensation that happens to this, which is why you see the circle in the middle, it's very prominent, so it only shows in the center. On the sides, the temperature is pretty high in comparison. So in the center, you're getting what, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, but on the sides of it, you're getting 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So there's a big difference of 30 degrees between the center and the sides. So not all the surface area is at 32 degrees. If it was, then, I mean, I think all these test results would have been different. Now, when you see condensation on this Smallrig fan, you notice that the whole panel has condensation on it, meaning that the whole panel is getting really cold. I tested out with the heat gun, and the center of the panel is at 40 degrees, not as cold as this one, but the sides of the panels were at 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So overall, this panel, even though it's smaller, overall it has a lower temperature. So when you really think about it, the average temperature of this entire back panel is 65 degrees. If you check the average temperature of the Tilta fan, then you're getting 75 degrees on average. Yeah, I know it reaches a lower point or a lower temperature, but when you get the whole average, is still a higher temperature by 10 degrees. So I think that's why the Smallrig fan does perform better than the Tilta fan. That's my opinion, nothing super scientific here. So now that I've said my piece when it came to, like, you know, the difference in sizes and how that may affect the cooling, not because it's bigger it means it's better. Obviously Smallrig has shown that smaller is better, okay? Smaller is better. So now that we've talked about like the performance of these fans and which one's better, let's talk about the usability of these fans, because the Tilta fan, as you guys can see down here, it does have like a couple screws, right? And so that actually screws to the cage. If you see down here, there's 2 screws right there, or 2 screw holes. So this fan screws into the cage, so it's permanent. Here, I'm gonna screw it in so you guys can see it. Now it's screwed in. You can use the Tilta key to tighten it up. All right, so it's screwed in there, so it's not going anywhere. Now, if you want to look at the display, all you have to do is tilt this down, and then you can open up the display. Now you have the display out, and all you do is pop the fan back in. But if you look, the fan is not really touching all the way because it's like slanted a little bit. It's because you can push this in right here. It comes out and it comes in. So the purpose of that is that when the display is closed up, you can pull this out and still close it. But when you want to open the display, you can make it so it's flush with the surface, so it does the most it can when it comes to dissipating heat. Now, this is great. It's very compact. It's very nice. And if you're done using it, you can literally pop it down, slide it back, and then it's done. Like, it's in there. You don't have to carry it, hold it. This would be cool, right? Just like that. If this had an EVF, if this ZV-E1 had an EVF, it would be cool because I can still use the EVF to take photos or, you know, take some video with the fan just chilling in the back. But that's not the case. So every time you want to see the display, you're gonna have to open it up. Even if you rotate the display, right? You can keep the display rotated and put this right on it. And then technically all you literally have to do is open this up, take the photo, take the video, and then close it back up. So that's kind of a neat feature, but let's just say you don't have this tilter cage. If you don't have the tilter cage, you can't really attach the tilter fan. That is one drawback that I have, one drawback. But yeah, let's imagine now that you bought the tilter cage, but you didn't buy the tilter fan. You instead bought the Smallrig fan because after watching this video, you were like, oh my god, the Smallrig fan is obviously better because it cools the camera more, but you're upset because you have the tilter cage, right? But you don't want the tilter fan because the Smallrig fan is better according to my testing. So what are you gonna do? Well, this fan fits literally any body, almost any body. The cool thing about this is that it has this clamp right here. See? So this is made to attach to the inside of your camera. So right there, see the little latch right there? You're gonna put it right on there. And then it just clicks into place and it's right in there. And it definitely always sits flush with the back of the camera, which is a good thing for me. I don't have to worry about it or try to see how far my thing is from the cage. You know, it just sits there and you know it's there. So I think that's another reason why it performs a little better than the Tilta fan. Great thing about this is that you're shooting, blah, 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 you're done, you can pop it out. You don't have to press anything. It literally just pops out by you like pulling on it. If you do this, it doesn't come off. So like, don't worry about it. You literally have to pull it off. But yeah, you pull it off, you can put it in your pocket, and you're good to go. So when it comes to usability of the fan, I think the Smallrig is better. So for example, right here, I have my A9 III. Now, let's just say the A9 III overheated for some reason, which obviously it doesn't. But if it was overheating, I could take this Smallrig fan, put it right on there, and then I have a fan back on the Sony A9 III. You know, obviously this was made for this camera, but it can be used. Just pop it out and then you're kind of good to go. Now, it would work better if this camera didn't have the flippy tilt out, all that screen. If it was like the A7 IV, which I'm recording with right now, then this would definitely fit better. But to my point is that you can use this on different cameras. This, you have to use it with the Sony ZV-E1 and this Tilta cage. But a key point to keep in mind, both of these fans, neither of them has an integrated battery. So you're gonna have to plug them in. They both have USB-C ports. The one thing I like about the Tilta fan is that it has a switch to go from 0 to 2. The Smallrig is, you gotta think about it a little bit, but you literally hold to turn it on. Once it's on, it'll give you a green light saying that it's on level 1. And then if you wanna bump it up to hyperspeed, then you click it again, it'll give you a blue light. So both of these have the same 2-speed, you know, adjustments that you can do. So yeah, when it comes to fans and overheating, definitely I have a clear winner. So the Smallrig is definitely the one staying in my bag, because to me it just performs better. Every test I ran, it just performs better. And the one test that it didn't perform better than this one, it was only by 10 minutes and it was after 2 hours and 25 minutes. So I'm not gonna hunt it for it. This is definitely my keeper. Tilta, I'm sorry, it is what it is. That's why we test stuff. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. Gosh, please don't ask me to do another overheating test. Please, 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 please. They're tough. They're tougher than they seem, you know? They're just very time consuming and a little draining. But yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And yeah, tara próxima.